Jaden Reed, JK Dobbins, Joe Mixon, and Cooper Kupp go off in week one, while the Bengals, Bears, and Falcons offenses fall flat on their face. We react to week one of the fantasy season on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to the Prize Picks app. Actually, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. We have almost every game in the books for week one. We're just waiting on the Jets and 49ers tonight. There's a lot to react to, right? There's guys who went off. There's guys who highly disappointed. Before we get into like the big performers and reacting to that, and if we think they'll continue, and then the bad performers, and if we think they'll bounce back, I want to just remind everyone it's week one and it's a small sample size. Last year, after week one, Mac Jones was the quarterback too. Tutu Atwell had 119 receiving yards on 8 targets. Josh Kelly and Roschon Johnson were both top 12 running backs. Hunter Henry, Hayden Hurst, Donald Parham, and Blake Bell were the top 4 tight end scorers. Like, we still don't know anything, right? There's still a lot to learn. But let's start with the wide receiver one on the week. Our boy, Jaden Reed, gets it done. He has an amazing game with over 130 or 170 total yards, 2 touchdowns, but he loses Jordan Love. Vinny, so can we trust him moving forward until Jordan Love comes back?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they just stick with Malik Willis, who they traded for late in the preseason, or go to Sean Clifford, who they released after they traded for Willis. He's on the practice squad, or do they go outside and find a quarterback? We'll have to see. I think they'll probably go with Willis. But you look at Jaden Reed, the good thing about him, what did he do? One of his touchdowns came on a long rush. He's just an offensive weapon for them, and he's the most consistent guy. Christian Watson can be really inconsistent with making big plays. I think Romeo Dobbs and Dontavian Wicks kind of cancel each other out a little bit. You have Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft, I should say, that are kind of out there doing not too much at tight end, right? So this is the guy that's a reliable playmaker when it's not Josh Jacobs in the running game. So, and they're really limited on playmakers. Now Marshawn Lloyd is on the shelf here, so we'll see how they kind of approach this. But you would expect it to be a run-heavy attack with Jacobs, but Reed is a big part of that rushing attack. They've used him a lot like Deebo Samuel, so I think there's a little bit concerned, but I think at the worst, Jaden Reed is playable each week, regardless of the quarterback, because he's the main guy as wide receiver 3.
Yeah, he's so good. And any quarterback could have got Jaden Reed that ball and that deep touchdown. He's so good at getting open and then yards after the catch. So you keep playing him. It might not be as great without Love, but I'm going to still keep putting him into my lineup. Jameson Williams for the Lions. It wasn't Monroe St. Brown who has a good game, or Sam Laporta for the Lions. It's Jameson Williams with 5 receptions, 121 yards, and a touchdown. He had a 52-yard touchdown in there. He gets the Buccaneers next week. Do you just keep plugging him in, or are you just saying, well, he got this because the Rams were focusing in on stopping the other two guys this week?
Well, I think that's going to be what happens in a lot of games, right? I mean, Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown clearly top targets for Jared Goff in the middle of the field, so they're going to force Jared Goff to throw deep. Now, the Rams, that was one of their weaknesses in coverage, so they kind of dared him to throw deep. He had that 52-yard touchdown, but overall 9 targets, so he wasn't just a flash big play guy. They got him involved. 5 catches, 121 yards. So, again, the Buccaneers really handled things, but I think that was more of a product of the Commanders being reluctant to throw downfield with Terry McLaurin last week. So I think you just look at it and say, yeah, we're going to stick with him, see what he has. He's got so much upside, so you play him as a wide receiver 3. It's a decent enough matchup. And the other thing is, if the Rams are going to struggle like that, I think you can expect potentially a Marvin Harrison Jr. rebound game. We'll get into his terrible game a little bit later in the show.
Oof, yeah, a lot of wide receivers had bad games this week. Now the Texans offense looked just like where they left off last year, right? But the two new guys, Joe Mixon looks to be an absolute steal in drafts right now. He had 30 carries, 159 rushing yards, and a touchdown. And then Stefon Diggs is the one that caught both of CJ Stroud's touchdowns. So Nico Collins still ends up having a big game in receiving yards, but Tank Dell did not. I will say with Stefon Diggs, I'm not going to love him moving forward. I know he got the 2 touchdowns, but when you look at the week 1 air yards among these wide receivers, Nico Collins led the team at 112, Tank Dell at 105. Stefon Diggs had 9 air yards on the entire game. He just ended up catching the 2 touchdowns. So I'm not going to rely on that from week to week. I'm still happy with Collins and Tank Dell. And then Joe Mixon seems like an every week must play until he shows us otherwise.
Yeah, they probably wanted to grease these wheels, right, before they started complaining. So, Mixon and Diggs, hey, welcome to the team. We're going to get you involved. But Mixon, look, I was really impressed with their running game. I mean, the Texans came out and looked really good on the ground. We thought Jonathan Taylor was going to dominate things in this game, and the Texans kind of turned the tables there. So we'll see. The Bears did give up some yards last week. This is the matchup on Sunday night. So, yeah, Mixon's always in your lineup now. I mean, he's going to get the touches. There was nobody else here. So RB2 at the worst on worst weeks because he can still get in the end zone. And you look at Stefon Diggs, I think that was a good matchup for Diggs and Collins in the slot. We talked about Kenny Moore. This week, it could be a little bit different, right? You have Jalen Johnson on the outside, Tyreek Stevenson. Both those guys played really well for the Bears. So it could be a Tank Dell week. So it's going to be someone getting the weeks and someone not with the Texans. So this can be the product of this. It's going to be very 49ers-like in that sense.
Cooper Kupp, man, last night gets 21 targets.
Jeez.
He turns it into 110 receiving yards, 14 receptions, a touchdown. It's not like a crazy productive performance on 21 targets, but Puka Nacua gets hurt early in the game. This knee injury looks like it's going to be a long-lasting thing.
Yeah.
We'll get some updates on it hopefully by tomorrow. They get the Cardinals next week. He was a wide receiver 2 in fantasy on the week. Cooper Kupp, you just plug him in and he's going to be a target hog. And as long as he's healthy, he's in your lineup.
Yeah, this is why I bumped up Cooper Kupp late, not because I knew Puka Nacua was going to have more injury setback, but I thought they would reset it and make Puka kind of the big play guy and play off him a little bit more, and then Matthew Stafford was going to go into old habits and throw to Cooper Kupp all over the field. Well, now Cooper Kupp is going to just swallow up these targets, and Stafford is going to go to him every week. They get the Cardinals, a very juicy matchup. The Bills got all their receivers going there against that secondary. So you think Cooper Kupp, 20 targets, that could be close to his regular workload in this offense. I think a lot of it's going to go through Kyren Williams and Cooper Kupp.
2 guys we were 100% correct on this week were Jayden Daniels and Baker Mayfield at the quarterback position. Yeah. Jayden Daniels does it on the ground. Didn't have a crazy passing day, 184 yards, but 88 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns on the ground. So far, he's the quarterback 3 on the week in fantasy points, only behind Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield, who put up 4 touchdowns, 2 of them going to Mike Evans because they're playing against the Commanders. But Jayden Daniels, you keep plugging in because I think that's pretty much his floor, right? He's going to get you those rushing yards and he gets the Giants next week. And Baker Mayfield's you can start him again next week. He gets the Lions, another good matchup. And Baker, since week 14 of last year, has been putting up fantasy points. He's been doing it.
Yeah, he should be managing a lot of leagues. He'll be a top pickup at quarterback. I'm really surprised he was available in more than half of leagues. We were looking at different guys here, but Baker's getting it done. This Liam Cohen offense, again, he played in it with the Rams. You saw the immediate dividends there. We thought the matchup for Mike Evans was going to be great downfield. But how about Chris Godwin getting back in the mix, playing his comfortable slot role? We know Kupp just destroyed the Lions in the slot, so that's great for him. If Godwin is keep on producing here, and then you have Jalen McMillan and some of these other guys coming strong. This passing game actually looks a lot more dangerous. Could be bad for my guy Cade Otton, but this passing game and everything in general with the Bucs just a little bit more diverse, a little bit harder to defend, and I think that's actually helping Baker Mayfield. So I'm excited to see what the Bucs offense does going forward. But as you said, a potential shootout here with Jared Goff. And if Jayden Daniels was the QB3, you just have to keep in mind he did a lot rushing in this game. So is more Jared Goff going to have to do it a lot with his arm against this team? So we'll see how it goes. But Jayden Daniels, I mean, he didn't even have a very good game and he
Yeah,
still put up that many fantasy points. So
exactly.
there's going to be a big divide between him and reality and fantasy. And I think the Giants, he could do a lot of damage against the Giants this week.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, running back that we weren't high on this season at all, of course, is the running back one on the week, Saquon Barkley. So we didn't love his cost. I mean, we still had him ranked as a top 8 guy, but we didn't love his cost this year. He gets 3 touchdowns in week 1, is the running back one in the week. Again, his receptions were down, which is what we were scared of. Only had 2 targets, 2 receptions. He ended up getting a receiving touchdowns, and he got in twice near the goal line. He's going to be a good play, right? But those touchdowns aren't going to be there every week.
Yeah, this might be a time. Hey, if someone's going to offer you a lot for Saquon Barkley, jump on it because his value is never going to be higher. Even if you like him, this is a good asset to flip here if you need multiple things that are going to help you out. So you had Nakua, you had some other issues that are developing at quarterback and tight end or something like that. You can go and try to flip Saquon Barkley because you can get some really good value for him right now. I'm not saying he's going to have a bad year again, but this is Saquon Barkley. He has big plays, big games. Then he can follow with a clunker. So Atlanta, I think it's a pretty good matchup. The Steelers ran on them pretty well here in week 2. So I think he'll produce, but again, don't expect him to go off. He's not necessarily going to finish as the RB1 overall. I know he has that potential, but I think the Eagles will be more distributive about their touchdowns and plays here going forward.
Now, JK Dobbins is
Wow.
that dude, right? He looks healthy, 135
Yeah.
rushing yards, a touchdown. He outsnapped Gus Edwards 33 snaps to 23. Edwards did lead the team with 11 carries, but he stunk on his carries, 26 yards. They get the Panthers next week. Plug in JK Dobbins.
Yeah, 176 yards rushing. Immediately, Greg Roman transformed this into a rushing attack. What is this team? I don't know this team. The Chargers are winning up battles up front. Joe Alt was blowing up Max Crosby in this game. They were creating turnovers, physical play all over. I don't know what this Chargers team was, but I like it for the running game. I don't love it for Justin Herbert, but J.K. Dobbins is the man. As long as he's healthy, play him. And again, he could have another monster game against the Panthers, who gave up 180 yards rushing to Alvin Kamara and the Saints.
Yep. I have J.K. Dobbins in a few leagues. He's going in my starting lineup. Oh, and then we have to talk about how Blake Corm stole Kyron Williams' job. Oh, no, just kidding. He had 0 snaps. Kyron Williams had 71 offensive snaps in week 1. Ronnie Rivers had the second most among the Rams running backs at 7. Corm didn't see the field. So Kyron Williams, workhorse.
Stash Corm is a handcuff. He's a handcuff. He's a clear handcuff, and that's it.
Yeah.
You cannot play him while Williams is healthy. But if they give Williams this many touches and he's a little dude, he could break down. They might need Corm. So you want them maybe to be a little bit more judicious, right? You don't want to run him into the ground. So that's all I'll say here. The Rams tend to give one guy all the touches, and it can be really good for fantasy, but can be really bad if he breaks down. So let's hope he stays healthy. One last guy we'll hit on before we hit the break, Rhamondre Stevenson. We left this Patriots offense for dead. This is the only thing they can do, but they can do it pretty well because their offensive line is doing well. They're putting 2 tight ends in there. Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry are extra blockers. They also might be their best receivers at this point. So 25 carries, 120 yards, a TD, really good here. 3 receptions to add to that. Seahawks next. I mean, we'll see. I mean, the Seahawks defense played pretty well against Mike McDonald. I think it'll be week to week, but to me, this is not going to be sustainable for Stevenson. They got to get something to scare you. I mean, the Bengals just were atrocious. So just be careful about that. Stevenson might have a lot of clunkers because they're going to focus on him.
Yeah, but like Stevenson's the only guy there.
Yeah,
so very much a volume play. You can keep plugging him in. We're going to get into the guys just as highly disappointed, right? You're expecting a lot, and we're going to do panic or patience. Are we panicking? Are we going to be patient with them and continue to put them into our lineups? We'll get into that right after a quick break. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So if you had Puka Nacua last night, it's okay. Your other ones would have stayed in play and didn't ruin up your entire fantasy lineup. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks, and you get a free square each of these first 4 weeks. I guess you already missed it once with Caleb Williams passing yard. You only need 1 Caleb Williams passing yard, which is a good thing because he had like 2 more than that. We'll get into Caleb Williams in a second here. But still, you get a free square with Caleb Williams every single week on Prize Picks. And then another projection I like for tonight's game, if you want to get started, Deebo Samuel 1+ rushing / receiving touchdown against the Jets. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 off instantly, or get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. This show is also sponsored by BetterHelp. Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. I have benefited greatly from online therapy over the past handful of years. It's taught me how to cope with my anxiety, irritability. It really does just teach you really great skills on how to set boundaries, and it empowers me to be the best version of myself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a quick, brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you don't have to stress about who you get matched with because you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/locked on today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked on. Before we get into all of these bad performances, because there was a lot and they hurt, I want to remind everyone, Saquon Barkley finished as a running back 32 last week in week 1. Ja'Marr Chase finished as a wide receiver 47. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 32. DJ Moore, wide receiver 73. This is all after week 1 of last year. So things will change. But let's start with this Bengals offense against the Patriots because it was atrocious. What happened here, Vinny? Joe Burrow stunk. Ja'Marr Chase barely did anything. No one did anything.
Yeah, I blame this whole drama at the end of the week. I mean, this is a team that kind of likes to have things together. And T. Higgins and that developing story, him not playing, and then Ja'Marr Chase, will he, won't he play? I mean, Joe Burrow's returning from this injury. Like, he doesn't need this wide receiver drama going up to the game. And I think it affected them a little bit mentally in this one. And on top of that, we know Joe Burrow's a notoriously slow starter, as well as his coach, Zach Taylor. They just do not start well. 0-2 is almost a thing. Like, they almost like that challenge. It must be like, let's dig ourselves into this hole. But the Patriots came in. They were not prepared on either line. I'll say that. They just got blown off. That's why we saw the Stevenson game. I think not having Higgins and Chase being bracketed a little bit really hurt. The Patriots defense, credit to them. They played really well. And the Bengals just kind of were sleepwalking a bit. They will not sleepwalk this week because they have to go into Kansas City. Joe Burrow is actually 3-1 against the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes head-to-head. So that's hopeful, right? That they could rebound. Maybe the level of the opponent will push them up and Higgins returns. Maybe that would help. But, yeah, it's really hard to trust Joe Burrow. The Chiefs' defense is tough. And, again, this whole offense seemed a little bit disjointed. Maybe Brian Callahan was a big loss here. But let's watch it here in week 2. I'm just not feeling a lot of good vibes. The only thing that helps me is that Burrow has this history.
Yeah, they need to pay Ja'Marr, and hopefully T. Higgins can come back. And then I'll start to get more excited about this Bengals offense. Caleb Williams and Kirk Cousins were 2 more quarterbacks that highly disappointed. I mean, Caleb Williams was not a guy I wanted to play anyways, but it was way worse than I ever thought it was going to be. 93 passing yards. And the production was just bad on the field, right? It's not like because they weren't passing a lot. He had 29 pass attempts.
Yeah.
He gets Houston next week. I'm not going to plug him into my lineup until I see something better from him. Kirk Cousins, on the other hand, he got the Steelers defense. It was a hard matchup for him. He stunk, right? Especially under pressure, threw 2 interceptions, only had 1 touchdown, 155 yards. He gets the Eagles next week. I do think he'll bounce back. But that Steelers defense was just real good.
Yeah, and sometimes Kirk Cousins might be a volume-based play. Like, you just need him to chuck a lot. This game was kind of close for a while with all those field goals the Steelers were kicking. I mean, it came down near the end, so they were kind of grinding this game out. But Cousins might going to have to chuck against the Eagles. Keep in mind, he did that in the game last year. He was a Viking playing there in week 2 in prime time. So I think he'll chuck and be fine if there's some things that open. I think Vic Fangio's defense can be tough, but we saw Jordan Love still put up some numbers with mistakes in week -1. So Kirk Cousins, I think, will be okay. Caleb Williams, yeah, we got to wait and see. The thing that was different is they were aggressive and letting him throw downfield. He missed a lot of balls. Keenan Allen and him seemed a little bit off.
Jeez,
You
yeah.
had an injury scare with DJ Moore. So I don't know. This Bears offense, maybe we overhyped it early. They still win the game because they scored on special teams and defense. No offensive touchdowns. It was all Cairo Santos. So we'll see. But the Texans on the road Sunday night, the Texans defense on the way up here. He's not Anthony Richardson, so he doesn't have that cheat code to put up those numbers in the same way. So I would say avoid as well with him. But Cousins, you could think about playing this week.
Yeah, I'd still rather play Baker Mayfield over Cousins moving forward, but Caleb Williams has to be on your bench until he shows you more. Now, along with those, obviously the wide receivers in those games stunk because their quarterbacks stunk, but there's a lot of other wide receivers that stunk this week, including our boy Marvin Harrison Jr. He did absolutely nothing. 1 reception, 4 yards. I want to remind everyone, Justin Jefferson had 2 receptions for 26 yards in his first NFL game. So there's hope. Chris Olave, in a huge game by the Saints, has 2 receptions, 11 yards. They put up 43 points, and he does absolutely nothing. He gets the Cowboys next week. No, thank you. Terry McLaurin, 2 receptions, 17 yards. Big disappointment in Jayden Daniels' first game. And they get the Giants. That's a good matchup. Amari Cooper, my boy, 2 receptions, 16 yards. But it was 9 targets, and it was against the Cowboys. He got 9 targets. He led the team with 9 targets, just 2 receptions. They get the Jaguars next week. I'm plugging Amari Cooper right back into the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cooper is fine. I think Chris Olave, yes, I'm a little concerned only because this chemistry with Derek Carr has never been good. He loves Rashid Shaheed downfield. He loves the tight ends. He'll throw to Foster Moreau to the end. I mean, Foster Moreau, by the way, was a top 5 tight end this week. That is gross. So he was in there, Juwan Johnson, and come on, this type of offense, I do not like it. So it could be just he needs a new quarterback. This is not going to work out too well. Be careful. Yeah, tough matchup. You might want to sit Olave. Terry McLaurin and Marvin Harrison. It does make this podcast sad because we're really high on both of them. Be patient. I'm going to send a message to Commanders. Just throw downfield. Let him just get the ball away from your back. So they were trying to just throw it to Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler and just too many checkdowns. Like let Jaden Daniels let that big arm fly. It actually could happen this week against the Giants, who gave a lot of Vikings up to free all over the field. So Terry McLaurin, I think, will be okay. They'll go back and look at that. We did not target him enough. And I think they try to contain the big play a little bit, the Bucs. So I think he'll be okay. Marvin Harrison also should be okay. We talked about the Rams. They just struggled against Jameson Williams. I don't know what was up. Greg Dortch was getting the ball here in key situations. You had Michael Wilson get the ball in the end zone. Trey McBride did lead the team in targets, which is not a surprise. The Bills' matchup is tough, right? Their secondary is pretty tough. This is a much easier matchup. They'll go back and say, look, we got to get this kid involved, and they'll correct that. Overcorrections always come in week 2.
Well, what's nice is that the Cardinals lost, right? So they should be looking at corrections. Now, what's not nice is the tight ends all stunk this week, right? Foster Moreau was the tight end 2 in the week, like you mentioned, at 12 points. Isaiah Likely went off, and then Kyle Pitts scored a touchdown. Nobody else did anything. I mean, it was a brutal week, including Dalton Kincaid, which is very, very scary. And I was like, the Bills won the game and they looked good. So they might not change things, right? And he only had 1 reception for 11 yards, only 2 targets. What do you do with Dalton Kincaid? Because this worries me. They get the Dolphins next week, should be high scoring, but is he going to get the targets?
Yeah, I don't need like Mac Hollins to make plays for this team. I don't need Khalil Shakir to always do this, right? This is not what we envisioned that, oh, he's fine. He lost Stefon Diggs and Gabe Davis, so he's going to still throw to his wide receivers. So that worried me a little bit. But I think it was also a bit of a product of this matchup where the Cardinals were just so bad in that spot, like at corner, that you could just keep throwing on them. Well, I think this week might be a little different, right? You have Jalen Ramsey and Kendall Fuller at the corners for the Dolphins. So middle of the field, Dolphins are not that strong. Like they're just not. So when you look at it, it could be a different game plan. It could be week to week based on the matchup, who the go-to guy is. But yeah, they got to get Kincaid involved. This is silly. I mean, they used their first-round pick on him. Then why did you do that? If you're not going to give him the ball and get more opportunities on a team like this, like they should be using him kind of like the Ravens are with Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews. Use them to stretch the field, make some plays. Maybe they'll come. Maybe they'll still correct that because it was a struggle, right? They didn't get their offense going until late, until Josh Allen was a freight train and took over. So let's get Allen and Kincaid going. This is bad. I would be patient with him.
Yeah, you got to be patient. I don't know if I'm going to plug him in until I see more targets, but I definitely don't do anything hasty and drop him just yet. That's for sure. Now the running backs, a lot of interesting running back performances. Raheem Mostert was outsnapped by Devon Achane by 6 snaps, and really just the Dolphins' run game all around really stunk. Achane got it done as a receiver. Javonte Williams for the Broncos was outtouched by Jaleel McLaughlin. Zamir White was outsnapped by Alexander Madison by quite a lot. Madison had 13 more snaps than Zamir White. And then Chase Brown played 17 snaps, with Zach Moss being the clear lead back. And even Brown didn't play a snap in the fourth quarter when the team was down. That's what you thought was going to be his actual role, right? So those are all running backs to be worried about moving forward. Now, Vinny, who among this group are you least worried about and you're willing to plug right back into your lineups?
I think I'm worried about all of them, but I'd say I'm least worried actually about Zamir White. It's kind of weird because he had the most touches of this group, right? I think what bothers me, Michelle, is that everyone has seen the Raiders practice, right? They've been in the preseason, all this. Why doesn't anyone say, oh, Alexander Madison's more involved? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. We were all just going Zamir White because what we know and what the evidence we have from last year of what's going on. Come on, let's get some more information here. That's a little bit of a side beef. But Alexander Madison, I'm not interested in all. I mean, he scored on a receiving touchdown that was a little bit random. Zamir White also had that fumble in the game, so maybe that was to do with it. They were frustrated against the Chargers. It's not going to get better this week. I would bench him. They're playing the Ravens on the road, so I can't trust either back. So, I mean, Chase Brown and looking at Zach Moss, those are going to be guys who are going to be inconsistent just with their roles. Chase Brown is unplayable right now. Zach Moss, you've got to just plug him in there at this stage. And Javonte Williams is unplayable. Jaleel McLaughlin is seeing the key spots here, and they're playing the Steelers this week. So that's not very good. And Raheem Mostert, look, it's over. I think they're just kind of Devon Achane is the man. They're trying to get Jalen Wright involved. They even had Jeff Wilson involved. So I think it's over for Mostert. So they're just going to be fickle about their backs. The one guy they're going to trust all the way is Achane.
Yeah, I think Achane and Zach Moss were winners among these, backfields.
Yeah.
Moss got the goal line carry as well, got in. Moss is a good play moving forward. It's like the high ceiling's probably not going to be there until the Bengals fix their offense, but he still is a good play moving forward, and Chase Brown is unplayable as of right now. We're going to get into some players who we thought maybe could bounce back from some bad seasons that they've had. That did not happen at all for the quarterbacks of Daniel Jones and Deshaun Watson and Will Levis. We'll hit on those guys while we finish up our week 1 reactions.
When it comes to buying tickets for big sporting events or concerts I like to go to, I like to wait to the last minute. I also just want to see what's there. Sometimes I don't know if I'm going to be free to go to something until, hey, this weekend I want to check out a game or some live music. Well, that's why GameTime is perfect for me, because I always want to wait till last minute, see what's available, get the best deals there to just make sure that I'm paying what I want for my tickets, seeing all the seats and knowing exactly what I'm getting before I get there. And GameTime is going to help me do that. I really know that GameTime is a trusted app that I'm going to always look for when I'm looking for tickets. I'm looking right now at the Notre Dame Georgia Tech game. We'll see if we can get tickets to that. I think Notre Dame's value might be a little bit down here after their loss to Northern Illinois, but look, it's still Notre Dame, Georgia Tech. I'm going to be looking at GameTime for that for sure, and I really try to get a good deal from them because it has great features here. You can really customize. You can see the all-in pricing, which I like, so you know exactly what you're paying, no hidden fees or taxes, things that you would not see in that original price there. So I like seeing that all-in prices feature that you can turn on there in the app or on GameTime. So check it out. It is easy curation to your needs as well. I like that. So they are kind of intuitive to knowing what you're interested in, showing you those events. You get nice views there, and they have the lowest price guarantee there. They'll give you that, or they'll credit you 110% of the difference. So yeah, you can be guaranteed that GameTime does have the lowest price, and your GameTime ticket coverage is always there. The most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Check it out. Just download the GameTime app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Michelle, it's time to close the show looking at guys who were awful and have been awful before. So we should not be surprised. Deshaun Watson, terrible against the Cowboys.
So
Daniel
bad.
Jones didn't show up, I don't think, against the Vikings, except to throw a pick six to Andrew Van Ginkel, the fastest I've ever seen. And Will Levis was looking okay. And then he threw a pick six, too, to the Bears that kind of lost them the game. So these three quarterbacks, deep guys that we were taking shots on, have some intrigue. Quickly, I mean, the Browns play the Jaguars this week. The Giants are playing the Commanders. And you do have Will Levis playing the Jets. So none of these matchups really sound all that appealing. Maybe Daniel Jones against the Commanders, but do you trust any of these guys going forward?
I think Watson against the Jaguars would be okay. Like, even
Okay.
though Watson's been terrible for the Browns, he's put up some good fantasy days. And I think the Cowboys are just going to be a really good defense. Jaguars are one of the worst pass defenses, and we saw them get destroyed by Tyreek and Waddle and Achan in the receiving game this last week with the Cowboys. So I think Deshaun Watson can have an okay week. Daniel Jones, who knows? He gets the Commanders, the worst defense, but this dude just sucks. He just sucks so bad. At least Neighbors got his 5 receptions, 66 yards. Neighbors, I'll keep plugging in. And then Will Levis, 127 passing yards. Like, come on. 2
Yeah.
interceptions, just disgusting. So no, not against the Jets whatsoever. That's you can drop Will Levis. But then also Jackson Smith to Jigba,
Ugh.
a wide receiver we thought would get more involved in this offense with the Seahawks, be used more down the field. He gets 2 targets, 2 receptions, 19 yards. It's Tyler Lockett, of course, that has the big game with 77 yards. But they get the Patriots next week, and that's gross. So JSN not startable until we see him start to be used more.
Yeah, it was interesting. I wanted to see specifically what the Seahawks were doing offensively. Then they had Kenneth Walker run nuts. They had Geno Smith run. They threw a touchdown pass to Zach Charbonnet. So they kind of were using the backs and Smith a lot in this game. So short to intermediate type of routes, not stretching the field. I thought they would be a little bit more explosive offense. What you're getting is an up-tempo, spread it out offense to help the running game and facilitate that. So that could be hard for JSN to break through, especially if Geno Smith is not looking his way. So let's hold on the Seahawks. I think they'll get better, but the Patriots defense doesn't inspire here in this matchup this week. Definitely JSN is a sit until we see more.
Now, Rashad White, he was like, he was
Mhm.
okay because he got it done as a receiver, which that's what happened last year, right? He had 6 receptions, 75 yards to help his fantasy day, but only 31 rushing yards on 15 carries, 2.1 yards per carry. Why I bring him up here is, are we worried? And like, nothing has changed. Is his efficiency on the ground has not changed. It's terrible. And Bucky Irving ended up being much more efficient on the ground, right? 9 carries, 62 yards. He did have that long 31-yard catch. Bucky Irving could also be used as a receiver. He was very good at that in college. Like, do we start to see Bucky Irving start to take Rashad White's role as the season goes along?
Yeah, this is a good player to end on because he kind of transitions us to the waiver wire. We'll look at JK Dobbins. We'll look at Bucky Irving. We'll look at Tank Bigsby cutting in a lot to the role of Travis Etienne. So a lot of these backs that are already on the radar, Madison included, that we didn't expect to have any key type of roles here. Yeah, what they said is they want to take a little pressure off Rashad White. He's been the only guy giving him a lot of touches, trying to preserve him a bit. Irving kind of has a complementary skill set. We kind of saw that with Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears, where look, this is a player that you can plug in his role and not change what you're going to do with him, right? You can run him, you can throw to him. So I think Bucky Irving will have more of an opportunity as we go forward. I still don't see a lot of balls coming his way when you look at the receivers playing well and White. So let's just keep him in mind. I think he's a clear handcuff as well as Bigsby here, like Blake Corum. There's some kind of new handcuff developing here. So I would think about him as a handcuff, but we'll talk about how much you want to prioritize him and some other waiver pickups there on Tuesday's show. I'm excited about that as we flip the page to week 2.
Yeah, there was a lot of injuries in week 1 that we're going to have to figure out. You're going to have to find replacements. There's a lot of disappointing plays that maybe you want to find a replacement for. So we will get into the injuries and, like you mentioned, the waiver wire pickups on tomorrow's episode. Thank you to you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We will talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.